Many years ago, in the little town called Bremen, there lived a girl named Essie. Essie was the pride of her family and the entire community. Her parents, Kwaku and Essie, were poor cocoa farmers. Life had always been hard, but they never gave up hope because they believed that one day Essie would bring them out of poverty. She was smart, respectful, beautiful, focused, and very intelligent. Yes, her parents were not rich, yet they sold the only land they had, borrowed from Susu groups, and even sold Essie's last goat just so Essie could go to the University of Cape Coast. She was the first in their family to ever gain admission to a university. Essie will graduate, get a big job in Accra, and come and take care of us, her father would say proudly. So when it was time for her to finally go to the university, Essie was overjoyed. She was determined to succeed. Initially, she studied very hard and attended every single lecture. But then, in her second year, she met a handsome man named Yaw, and her life was never the same again. Yaw was charming, handsome, and came from a very wealthy family in East Legon. He would buy her food, pay her hostel fees, and spoil her silly with gifts. Before long, Essie fell head over heels in love with him, and soon enough, she started sleeping with him. Then, out of the blue, one day she missed her period. At first, she told herself it was just stress from exams, but then 2 months passed, and reality hit her hard. She was pregnant. Essie cried and wailed loudly. "My parents will kill me. What have I done to myself? How can I be pregnant after all that my parents have sacrificed to send me to school? What am I doing? I'm a disgrace," she said, crying and weeping. Then she called Yaw, the man responsible for the pregnancy, and informed him, saying, "I'm pregnant. I'm carrying our child," sobbing. But Yaw simply laughed and said, "Oh, please, stop that nonsense. Stop that joke. If you are pregnant, what should happen now? Carry the pregnancy to the father of the child. Why are you coming to me? Are you trying to tell me that I'm the only person who slept with you? I beg you, if it's a joke, you better stop it." "I don't like it," Yaw replied. But Essie responded, "I'm not joking. Yaw, how can you say this? You're the only man I've ever slept with in my life. This is your child, our child. Don't do this to me. I don't know where to go. I don't have anybody to turn to if you reject me," Essie cried. Immediately, the call ended. Essie tried calling back again and again, but Yaw had blocked her, and just like that, he disappeared from her life. A few weeks later, when Essie returned to Bremen during the holidays with a swollen belly, her mother screamed and fainted. Her father did not speak to her for weeks. The whole town started gossiping about her. Her mother stopped going to women's meetings at church. Her father began drinking again. They were so disappointed in Essie. "So, after all our sacrifices, you went and got pregnant for some useless boy in the streets of Accra who won't even marry you. You have disgraced this family. You have brought shame upon us. I wish you were never born. I curse the day you were born." Her father screamed angrily at her. Essie was always sad. She would lock herself in her room and cry non-stop. 9 months later, Essie gave birth to a baby girl named Siwa. But there was no joy in the house. It was not as if a newborn baby had been born. Her grandparents never called her by name. Instead, they always referred to her as that child. Her father never carried the baby. Her mother would hiss loudly whenever the baby cried. To them, Sewa was the reason Essie's future was destroyed. And soon, Essie began to believe it too. Essie stayed in the village, helping her mother with the farm, washing people's clothes for money, and selling tomatoes by the roadside just to survive. She begged her parents several times to let her go back to school, but they refused, saying, "Oh, so you're not satisfied with all that you have done? Essie, this time, you want us to sell our kidneys for what? For you to go back to school and get pregnant again," her mother snapped angrily. So Essie no longer brought up the subject of completing her education. Instead, she tried her best at home, working hard and doing all sorts of odd jobs to make ends meet. But nothing she did was ever enough. Her parents hated her daughter and did not even allow Sewa to eat their food. So Essie was single-handedly responsible for providing for Sewa. 3 years later, Essie was now 23 years old, and Sewa was almost 4, running around the compound excitedly with no care in the world. But Essie had no joy in her heart. She had tried everything to make their life better, from hawking bread in the mornings to washing people's clothes to carrying firewood from the bush for old women. But the money she made was never enough. Every single day, her father would speak harshly to her, saying, "If you had focused on your studies, by now you'd be a big woman working in Accra, driving a big car. Not here hawking bread and doing all sorts of menial jobs. Now see your life and that bastard child who destroyed your future." Her father would scream angrily at Essie. In no time, her parents' words began to pierce her heart. At night, she would lie in bed and cry quietly so Sewa would not hear her. She loved her daughter deeply, but it felt like Sewa was a chain tied around her neck, heavy and dragging her down. She felt her life would have turned out better if not for Sewa. A few months later, suitors started coming for Essie. It was no surprise because Essie was a beautiful young lady, but as soon as the men heard she had a daughter, Sewa, they all disappeared. Some even had the boldness to mock her openly. One man even said, "I cannot marry secondhand property. You are fairly used. As far as I'm concerned, and they would burst into laughter. So Essie began to grow bitter and resent Sewa. Sometimes she would look at her and say, "If not for you, my life would have been better." One evening, as she walked home from the market, sweating under the hot sun, she thought long and hard, "I cannot continue like this. I cannot continue living in this place, being the subject of mockery. All the petty businesses I have tried are not sufficient to cater to me or my child, let alone my parents. And now that I have no university education, what will become of me?" Essie thought aloud. She made up her mind to escape the clutches of poverty. Since she had no education and her petty businesses were not yielding meaningful results, she decided she had to find a wealthy man willing to marry her. To do that, she had to get rid of Sewa, since no man agreed to marry her because she already had a daughter. So she went back home and told her parents of her decision. They were fully supportive and said, "Please get that daughter of yours, that bad luck, out of our lives, out of your life. If not for her, you'd have been a big woman in Accra," her parents said. A week later, Essie took Sewa to a distant cousin named Auntie Ozo, a woman her mother had grown up with but hadn't seen in over 15 years. Auntie Ozo was a rough and loud woman. When Essie arrived with Sewa, she explained everything. Auntie Ozo laughed dryly and said, "Why did you even keep the pregnancy? You're not smart. You're too naive. If I were in your shoes, with the opportunity to go to university and I got pregnant, I would have gotten rid of it and secured my future. After all, you're going to have other children. You had a promising future, and you threw it all away for what? For this thing standing in my presence. Anyway, the deed has been done. So, if I understand you correctly, you want me to raise your child as my own so you can go look for a husband, right? It's not a bad idea. You can leave her because, as it stands, I need a small girl to run errands and serve as a maid for me," she said wickedly. By this time, Essie was crying, but she felt she had no choice. If she wanted the beautiful life she had always imagined, she had to do what she had to do. So Essie wiped her tears and nodded. She knelt before her daughter, crying, and said, "Sewa, listen to me. From today, you must never call me mommy again. You will call me Auntie Essie. I'm no longer your mother, but I will come and visit when I can. Auntie Ozo is your new mommy now, so please listen to her and respect her. Do all that she tells you to do, and I promise you won't have any problems." Essie stood up to leave. Sewa stared at her in confusion. Mommy, what are you doing? Are you leaving me here? Please don't go. I don't want to stay here. I want to go back home," Sewa cried. But Essie simply walked away. She was done with Sewa for good. 2 months later, Essie met Mr. Fifi at a friend's engagement party in Accra. He was everything she had prayed for: tall, rich, confident, wearing Italian shoes, and spraying money like water. He drove a black Range Rover and lived in a serviced apartment in East Legon. Mr. Fifi was everything Essie had dreamt of and prayed for. In no time, they got acquainted, and they married in a big, beautiful wedding ceremony. Her parents danced until they almost collapsed. They were so happy that their disgrace had been turned into glory. Essie felt she had finally arrived after all the shame, insults, and tears. The day she married Mr. Fifi, it felt like heaven had opened over her. Marriage was sweet for Essie. They lived in a big, beautiful apartment in East Legon with a swimming pool and a small gym. Essie would wake up each day to the smell of bacon and eggs prepared by the maid. Every weekend, they went to fancy restaurants like Santoku and Coco Lounge. They traveled to Dubai, Seychelles, and London, anywhere Essie wanted to go. Mr. Fifi took her. He would post their trips on Instagram with captions like "My queen, the queen of my heart, my world, my oxygen." Essie was happy. She wore expensive wigs, carried designer bags, and began to associate with other wives of rich men. She joined the East Legon Wives Association, a WhatsApp group full of women married to wealthy men. She sent money home regularly. Her parents built a new house and stopped walking to the farm barefoot. They could now boast, "Our daughter is a big woman in Accra." Life was sweet indeed. Life was beautiful. But after 2 years of marriage, no children were forthcoming. Essie began to worry and tried everything from hospital tests to fertility treatments to prayer camps, but nothing worked. She wondered why. After all, she had given birth to a child before, so she knew she was fertile. Why couldn't she conceive for her husband? One day, the doctors told her there was nothing medically wrong with her, which worried Essie even more. Initially, Mr. Fifi tried to be supportive. He would hug her and say, "Don't worry, my love, my queen. You're enough for me. You're the oxygen I breathe. Your existence alone is sufficient for my well-being." But love has an expiry date too. By their 5th year, Mr. Fifi had changed completely. He barely came home, stopped posting her pictures, and started locking his phone with a fingerprint and password. He would disappear for weeks. And when Essie asked where he went, he would reply coldly, "Don't stress me, woman, don't stress me." One evening, it finally happened. Mr. Fifi returned home with a beautiful young lady named Adwoa, and casually informed Essie that she was his new wife. Essie stood frozen, then began to cry. "What are you doing? What are you saying? My love, how can you bring another woman into our home, into what we share, into something so sacred?" Essie said, crying. But Mr. Fifi replied, "Essie, I am marrying her. It's not up for debate. I need children. I'm not asking you to leave the marriage. You can stay if you want, but just know your place. Tears filled Essie's eyes. After all these years, after all we built together, she said, crying. But Mr. Fifi laughed wickedly and said, built what? Did you say after all we built together? What did you build with me? You built nothing. You came with nothing. You are still nothing. Just like that, Essie's world came crashing down. Barely 2 months later, Mr. Fifi packed her things into 2 small suitcases and placed them outside the gates. Go back to your village. All these years, all my money I spent on you, yet nothing to show for it, not even one child, not even an imbecile. Nothing. Mr. Fifi screamed at her. She begged. She knelt. She cried. But Mr. Fifi was done. Essie stood under the hot Accra sun, penniless, homeless, hopeless. She had no savings because she was either spending on herself or sending money home for her parents to build a new house. She didn't want to go back to the village because her parents would be disappointed. So she tried to reach out to her rich friends, but when they heard her husband had thrown her out and his new wife was pregnant, they didn't want to associate with Essie anymore. They felt she was no longer one of them. Essie was broken and cried like a child. She took a car back to Bremen. When she arrived, her parents were unhappy to see her. What are you doing here with all your bags? The way you're looking, it doesn't look good, her father asked angrily. Essie fell to the ground, weeping. Mama, Papa, Fifi has killed me. Fifi has married another woman. He threw me out. I have nothing, Essie said, crying. But neither her father nor mother was moved. They were unhappy to see her back because she was their meal ticket. Now that she had been thrown out of her matrimonial home, they feared becoming poor again. They lived in a beautiful home and ate well, having stopped farming since their daughter got married. Her return meant a return to their life of struggle. Meanwhile, far away in the city of Accra, life was telling a different story for Sewa, Essie's daughter, whom Essie had abandoned. Sewa was now a superstar, a songwriter, and an artist. But it hadn't always been rosy for Sewa. She suffered greatly at the hands of Auntie Ozo, who was wicked to her, maltreated her, beat her mercilessly, and starved her for days. Unable to take it any longer, Sewa ran away at just 14 years old. She lived on the streets, sometimes sleeping under the bridge at Medina. She had been raped twice by men who promised to help her. There was no odd job Sewa didn't do. She hawked water, worked at a restaurant, and served as a house girl. But one evening, while strolling in Kasoa, a music producer named Kojo heard her singing to herself and froze. He was in awe of her voice and immediately signed her. That was how Sewa's life changed forever. In no time, she released her album and became a popular singer, a superstar. Within a year, Sewa had blown up. She performed at weddings, festivals, and award nights. Her songs topped the charts, and she signed a deal with a major record label in Lagos, Nigeria. She bought a 2-story building in East Legon Hills and drove a brand new white Range Rover. People loved Sewa. The whole of Ghana loved her. Her songs were about survival, betrayal, pain, and hope, things she had gone through. These touched everyone, but nobody knew she was singing her own story, about how her mother abandoned her and never came back. One Sunday afternoon, Essie was cleaning the house when she looked up and saw Sewa's face on the screen, singing in front of a crowd. Essie was shocked. "That's my daughter. That's my Sewa," Essie said, tears streaming down her eyes. All these years, she had abandoned her daughter. After leaving her with Auntie Ozo, she never visited, looked for her, or sent money. Now, this same child she had abandoned had become everything Essie had ever dreamed of becoming. Essie was sure Sewa must hate her, but she decided to visit her daughter. 2 days later, Essie went back to Accra without telling anyone. She didn't know what she would say or tell her daughter, but she knew she had to see her. She had to beg for forgiveness and find Sewa, no matter the cost. When she got to Accra, she went straight to the address she had memorized from an interview Sewa did on TV. The house was like a palace, with flashy cars in the compound. Essie stood there, staring in shame. She told the security guards she wanted to see Sewa. They looked her up and down and said, "Sorry, madam, who are you?" one asked harshly. "I'm her mother," Essie replied. Stammering, the guards laughed as if she had cracked a joke. "I beg, madam, whose mother? Fear God. Do you know how many fake mothers come here every day? Every time. I'm her mother. I want to see her. Move from the gates. What kind of nonsense is that?" One shouted at her. Essie began to cry, begging, "Please tell her it's me. Essie from Bremen. Essie, her mother, is here." The guards looked at each other. One entered the house to make a call, and minutes later, he returned and said, "Madam, she's not interested. She said you should leave the gate." Essie fell to her knees at the gate and cried loudly, "Please, I just want to see her just once." "Let me explain. I didn't mean to abandon her. I was young. I made mistakes. I'm sorry. I wish I could turn back the hands of time. Let me use the rest of my life to make up for what I've done." Essie cried, but the guards remained firm. "Madame does not want to see you, so please leave." Essie stood outside for hours, refusing to leave, even when her legs began to ache and shake, even when she was hungry. Finally, when it was getting late, a beautiful black car drove out of the mansion, and inside was Sewa. When Essie saw her, she rushed toward the car, waving her arms. Sewa, Sewa, it's me, Essie, your mom, please. The car slowed down, and for a moment, Essie thought Sewa would forgive her. But Sewa looked at her calmly and said, I have no mother. My mother died a long time ago. Then she rolled up her car window, and the car sped off. That night, Essie slept in front of her daughter's gate. She cried and cried, feeling terrible. The next morning, she had no choice but to return to Bremen. Her parents didn't bother asking questions, as they could see she was broken. Years passed. Essie's parents, Kwaku and Essie, were aging quickly, and Essie still lived with them. Each day was a battle for survival. She did all sorts of odd jobs to put food on the table, fetching firewood, selling cassava by the roadside. But sometimes, they had no money for food and went to bed hungry. Meanwhile, in Accra, Sewa was living her life. She didn't stop at being a musical superstar. She enrolled in the University of Ghana, took night classes, and graduated. She bought a second house in Trasico and opened a foundation to sponsor abandoned girls through school, providing for their needs so they wouldn't fall prey to predators, as she had. Sewa became a voice of hope for thousands, and her songs continued to break records. A few years later, she got married, had 2 children, and lived happily ever after. She never looked for her mother or grandparents. Yes, she had forgiven them, but she wanted nothing to do with them ever again. Hi, besties. It's your favorite storyteller, Amalicha. Thank you so much for watching my story to the end. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this one. As usual, first off, why is it that most men don't like to marry single mothers who already have children? What's so bad about marrying a woman who already has a child? It can't be that bad. After all, a woman would gladly marry a man who has children. That's one. Secondly, if you were in Sewa's shoes, would you have forgiven your mother? Considering she was young when she abandoned you, would you forgive her and let bygones be bygones? Please share your thoughts in the comment section and support your homegirl by subscribing to my channel, liking my videos, and sharing with your loved ones. Until I come your way again with more interesting stories. Bye!